store all of your files as someone who creates digital content. This can be photos, videos, or TikTok videos, or YouTube shorts, or I don't know. Here's the system I came up with. First, I tried to just store everything I recorded. And this turned out to be a very nonsensical approach because it prevented me. Because it made it very difficult for me to decide whether this is something I would use in the future anymore. So therefore, I only create one single file. If this video doesn't turn out to be nice, or it is too long, then I just delete it. I just store the finished file. Then I have one hard drive, so I got 5 hard drives, which are each 5 terabytes. I also have a notebook that is 2 terabytes. Basically, I have 1 terabyte for the notebook itself, and I have basically an SD, 1 terabyte built into the notebook I could use for editing videos, for editing pictures on the notebook itself. So therefore, I don't have to delete files off of my notebook just because I actually want to work with the notebook. I mean, you do not really get many notebooks with 2 terabyte, but I thought about it like this. I mean, I just paid more, a little bit more, but I had just the SSD, the more storage, just built into it. Obviously, I could also just buy an external SSD, but then I would have to plug it in, and I also have to not forget it at certain places where I would plug it in. Therefore, it is already built in, and I don't have to think about it anymore. So now, my notebook has 2 terabyte, and the 2nd terabyte is basically only for, it's basically, I don't actually view it as storage on my notebook. Therefore, it's basically an external SSD. It's my work SSD for editing things. Therefore, I have a 1 terabyte notebook basically. So I came up with this idea. What if I basically had like one main device, which was the notebook, and the second device was my phone. My phone is also a computer. It even has a better camera than my notebook ever will, and also a better microphone. So now the thing is this. What if I basically had a very portable version of my notebook? And the idea turned into this, into buying the Galaxy S10 in 2019. It came out and it had 512 gigabytes of storage. And by plugging in an SSD with 512 gigabytes, basically I have a 1 terabyte notebook and a 1 terabyte phone. This is something that is not really possible anymore because, well, Samsung decided to get rid of the SD slot and also to just get rid of the 512 gigabyte option. Therefore, with the S20 and the S21, that's not possible. Now, I have this notebook, again 1 terabyte, and this phone. And now, if you connect it to a cloud storage, which syncs all the files from your notebook to your phone, theoretically, you would have the same files on your phone as on your notebook. And this is something that's huge. You can't just connect your OneDrive account, then sync all these files offline, which is something that was added like 1 year ago, I think. Just the option to sync down all these files. And then theoretically, the files on your phone and your notebook would be identical. If you now lose one of these devices, I mean, it's additionally backed up in the cloud, but also you would just have a working computer at any given point in time, because with these things, and I actually didn't have a computer last year for like 3 or 4 weeks, which was not the best thing ever. I still had a very old notebook, which basically did work worse than my phone. The thing is, with these phones, you can just plug them in, and then they basically work as a desktop computer if you have an external monitor. And that's something that's very nice. So this was the idea. Next, I thought a lot about, in the past I thought a lot about recording stock footage and actually selling this stock footage. I took basically images for 10 years of my life straight of different places with a professional camera. Everywhere I went, I took all these pictures in RAW. Pictures are not that storage intensive, but I also recorded videos. And the videos do sell for basically 10 times the price. So therefore, I just began to store all these videos. And I just didn't know what I should do, because the thing is, if you now want to edit one of these files, you just run into bottleneck after bottleneck after bottleneck. The thing is, you actually need a connection that has a high enough speed to transfer all this data for editing Otherwise, you would have to have a notebook. But the problem obviously is if you have like 20 projects, you cannot store all the files on your notebook. Obviously, you could just say that at any point in time, you just have one project, but this obviously is something that's not very practical. Therefore, you have like 20 different projects, and then what happens if you then run out of storage on your notebook? Or, I mean, you just edit off of your drive. This basically means you plug in your drive and you don't copy the files to your computer. Then you run into the next problem, which is the transfer speed. And when it comes to transfer speed, I mean, all the old drives, especially hard drives, if you have like a traditional hard drive like this one, they can have like read and write speeds that are quite nice, but obviously with an SSD it will be better. So you could basically just store all your files on SSDs, but this obviously also would create a problem. You could just use a temporary storage, as I said, using the 1 terabyte on your notebook as a temporary storage, and then you would have the problem with editing the files again. So basically what I decided is that I didn't want to spend time anymore reading about Thunderbolt, reading about what external GPU would actually allow me to, on my HP Spectra 15 2019 edition, I think, which has an 960MX NVIDIA, but it's not the best GPU on the market, I guess. It's just something for random video editing. Essentially, you can think of it as your phone actually could almost do the same kind of editing. The newer iPhones are really, really good when it comes to this graphic-intensive editing. Now, the problem obviously is that you cannot store files on your notebook for long term. You cannot also store files on your hard drives and then also are able to edit it. The next problem is that I didn't want to stay in one place for the rest of my life. Therefore, when moving, I mean, obviously I could have gotten one of these very big RAIDs, for example. A RAID is just something where you can actually take these individual files without a proper case and you just plug them in, and there is also a system for backup. And the system for backup is actually something that's very useful because the thing is, these hard drives fail every now and then. For example, in my life, many hard drives already failed and I didn't have that many hard drives. And then you just lose files upon files upon files. At one point in time, I basically lost all of these pictures, all of these 10 years of pictures, I lost them. I could restore them after like 5 weeks of trying to restore them. And actually all of these thousands of pictures, like 20,000, I actually sorted them manually and renamed them manually and got them back into these folders just to restore these pictures. And that's something that's just, if you think about how you actually want to spend your life, do you want to spend your life organizing files on your notebook? I don't. This is something you kind of have to do. You also have to kind of accept to do it, but at the same time it just makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I also got into, obviously these problems exist and you just cannot undo them, you just cannot think them away. And here is what I came up with. I already told you about the notebook, I already told you about what happens to... So first of all, I had very different drives. I had like a 1 terabyte drive, the first drive, external drive I ever bought. I also had like another 1 terabyte, and I had like 2 terabytes, all of different things and sizes. And these all had these old ports. The problem is you cannot really edit off of a hard drive very efficiently. Because if you want to edit, then you want to edit. And the bottleneck is not the creative thinking you provide, but it's much more how fast your computer is and how fast the drives provide the files to the video editing program. Therefore, this is just something that's very frustrating. Also, when editing pictures, for example, the bottleneck is not you deciding if you actually want to do this thing or if you want to apply this filter, but it's Lightroom taking 50 seconds or 15 to actually apply the filter. And you just, oh yeah, I guess I'll wait another 10 seconds. And this is just not how you, in long term, want to spend your life. So now, apart from the fact that there are all these noises and I just cannot get rid of them, even though, I mean, it's kind of obvious they stem from my phone. I do have the Zoom next to the phone, which is probably causing the noise. But I still want to record this thing right now because I actually want to finish the video. So, I made this decision. For one, I didn't actually want to store all these just-in-case files anymore. It just didn't make sense anymore, because that's just not. I just didn't want to waste any more of my time into organizing these files. So therefore, I said, what if I could somehow simplify this approach? What if I could use like easy heuristics? So another heuristic, so things that made it easier for me to actually do things in the past, is this. I just bought files which can connect to your computer with one single cable. This means the actual power is transferred through the cable itself. This means I just couldn't buy drives that were like 10 terabytes and had like an external power source. The problem is that until now, and I bought these files already 1 year ago, but in terms of file storage, I guess the curve is just not exponential anymore. These are 5 terabytes, and these can connect and actually with power supply over USB, and this is something that works. I also only bought files like these in the past. But I had like all these different cables, and I was like, I mean, there is this new standard. It's called USB-C, and that's something that your phone probably already uses. Also, these notebooks have the standard, and there's also Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is basically the form factor of a USB-C, but it's just, it can transfer much higher data speeds, for example, 40 gigabits per second, compared to the USB standard, so the 3.0 or 3.15 or 10 gigabits of data per second. Now, obviously, if you wanted to, at some point in the future, plug in an external CPU, not an external CPU, but GPU, so an external graphics unit to your computer, then that's something I could do with this notebook. So if I do actually want to edit like very big files, then I could do it with my notebook. That's something I also looked out for in my notebook. And so at the same time, I didn't want to have like all of these different things. I didn't want to have like a RAID, because every time you move, I mean, moving files through space, not only time, but through space, is basically one of the riskiest things you can do. These files are your work, maybe of years. And if you just drop one of them, well, then you're out of options. I mean, it could be that they are not. You just don't want to take these with you. You just want to leave them where they are. I mean, obviously there could also be a fire, there could also be water damage, but the thing is, if you just take these into your hand, that's a risk you don't want to carry. These 5 terabytes, for example, on here, I just had so many instances where I lost all these files, where I organized all these files. I just spent so much. I probably spent like 5 or 10 times the amount of time I spent on organizing files I didn't even want to organize because of some hard drive failure, compared to recording videos. This is like the actual recording time of videos. So now, first of all, here's the new approach I came up with. First of all, the notebook and the phone. I mean, I obviously will upgrade these devices in the future once there are options available that actually are kind of working for me. But here's the approach I came up with. First of all, the future drives should only be with the one with basically power over USB again. The next thing is that I just said that I didn't care about data speeds. Why? Because I decided to basically kind of just not edit the videos. Of course, you can do this 50-second TikTok video where you sit on for 50 hours to make the actual special effects where you think about it for days. But what if you publish the video and then it just doesn't do well? I mean, you just don't know. And the less videos you have published, the less you actually know what will work and what won't. I mean, you can take a look at all these videos other people have published and you can do the exact same thing and maybe get similar results, but it's a lottery ticket. Do you really want to invest a whole week into a video and then find out that it doesn't do well? Or then just make one minor mistake? Or so I came up with this approach. I had 20 terabytes of storage. And these 20 terabytes, maybe I will run out of storage in the future. I don't really know. But here is the approach I had. Basically, in terms of file size, you kind of can forget about about text files. Text files basically don't take up any storage at all compared to these other file types. The second thing I did, in the past I had 5 terabytes of a video archive, basically where I stored movies. And I also had with every drive you basically have to back up the drive, because otherwise, if the drive hits the floor, you're out of options. Therefore, here's the one thing I did. I just deleted all of the video things. Not the video things, but I deleted all of my movies. Because, for one, of course I can look at movies other people made for my own amusement for the rest of my life, or I just don't. The second thing is that, similar to Spotify. Spotify is just a service. I can connect my phone and then I just hit download on all of these playlists and that's it. I have to log in, I download all of my playlists, and then my phone is a working music player again. If I now, like I did for 15 years, because Spotify wasn't here, and I also didn't pay for music streaming in the beginning, and just like many of other people of my generation, I just downloaded things from the internet, and I just stored them on my files, on my hard drives, and organized them, and renamed them. And thought about, do I say actually the Beatles, or do I just say Beatles? And when I search, do I actually find these things? And then you only had crappy versions of these songs, because obviously there's also copyright. So I said, I just don't organize files for myself anymore. This means there are two things. The one is you create things. The other thing is you consume things when it comes to devices and files. This means you can either record videos for YouTube, for example, or you can use YouTube to watch things for your enjoyment or for your knowledge or for your whatever. Now the thing is, what if you also only used all these services and the only way you could actually watch yourself or, for example, have audio of yourself on your phone was through publishing it to Spotify, for example. This meant that I just got rid of all the file organization I did for myself for all of these years, basically organizing, for example, songs. This is another step. The next step was that I just said, I just don't do all of these playlists myself anymore. I just go all in on Spotify, and I just paid for Spotify for the rest of my life, and I created hundreds of playlists for all different situations, and I made this decision and it now works, and I haven't ever thought about how much time I spent in the past organizing just songs of other people that I listen to. That's just another decision that played into this role. I still have a few of these songs, like music libraries of friends I copied and I never organized, and also all the past songs, which basically only are a few thousand songs. I still have them, but compared to the video files, compared to what I'm recording now, they are, in terms of storage, not that huge. I thought about just deleting them, because then I would just delete, just like the movies, I would just delete the opportunity to actually, for one, spend any more time on organizing all these in the future. For example, on my movie archive, I spent hours and hours organizing all of these movies. I had 3 different versions of a movie that was one was a very nice version, one was another version with a subtitle. I don't know if in the future there will ever be a service where you can actually watch all these movies. But right now, whenever I actually want to watch a movie, whenever I actually want to take the time to watch a movie, I can just go on 5 different pages, like Google Play Video, or YouTube, doesn't matter. I don't know if Google Play Video still is online. Or I can go on Amazon and actually buy the movie for $4. And this means I don't have to invest hours and hours again into my video archive. But that's talking about the files I stored for myself for self-consumption, basically. Let's now talk about these 4 different hard drives. I said 20 terabytes is the maximum. I also very conveniently had just these 4 cases. I also very conveniently just had this action cam thing where these actually fit in just these 4 things. So now I basically have the perfect protection layer. I take these files, put them in here, and then I am ready to go. And these are all the files I have. I just take my notebook, I just take my phone, and I just take these 4 drives. So what now is on these 4 drives? I have basically one primary file. And I also realize that my phone is running out of battery again because, well, it's a phone. Therefore it runs out of battery constantly. It's a constant battle of battery. Number 1, that's the creative file. I only store videos, visuals, so basically text, theoretically, so visual are visual things, but obviously that's images. Also text, because that's also something you consume on a visual basis. Then there's audio, and then there's video. So these are the 3 file types. I basically organized, I thought about a lot about what are these files actually, what can you actually record, and obviously this is based on the senses you have as a human. The main sense you use for getting in information is the visual sense. And therefore we have books because these are just things we can consume with our eyes. We think about it in our brains, but this is something that's visual. If you then record it over time and also add audio, then you get a video. So now a visual is basically, for example, an image. It would also be text, but texts are things that should not be stored in files, if you think about it. You can't store them in OneNote, for example. If you have a book, then, for example, or you try to write a book on your own, then you have like one file. But for example, when it comes to finances, organizing your finances in Excel, for example, why not just take all these different spreadsheets and just put them in one Excel file? Therefore, you have one file and you don't actually have to hassle around with all of these different files. Therefore, I just deleted so many files. Also, think about all the documents you won't ever need in your life anymore. Or maybe all of these pictures you downloaded once and, yeah, well. But also, in terms of file size, pictures are not the thing. You need to worry about it, I guess. So basically, I have one creative file. This creative file is only things I created myself. These are not external things. This is the primary drive. It's 5 terabytes. The first categorization is it made by me? Is it creative? So made by myself? Or is it foreign, made by someone else? I also have the previous foreign folder where I still have like the music files I talked about from other people, like from songs you hear on the radio. These are not things I made. Therefore, I call this foreign, and I also have an audio, a visual, and a video file. So I also have like a few downloaded workout videos. I still have downloaded, but I will never watch them because the way to access it is now with internet, and it's just way easier. It's just using a service to provide actually the file to you. Then I just copy all of these with a copy program to my second drive, which is an exact copy of this file. I don't create an image or something like this. I did it in the past, but then the problem is, if you now lose this file, then you just have to go through a process of restoring the file. But if you just create an identical copy, then you can just plug in the one drive, throw it away, and just connect the other drive, and then order a new drive, and then just copy it again. That's basically work. I mean, the work you have to do is like a few minutes. But if you instead create an image, then you have to go all through the possibilities of, do I actually restore the things I made, the changes I made a week ago? Or, oh yeah, I also saw this file, and also it just didn't work for me. I tried it, I used a proper backup program, and I tried to restore it, didn't work. So therefore, I just decided, I can create these things also with Windows Explorer. It doesn't really work very well, but I'm just not dependent on something like a proper image or program, a program that creates images and also timestamps and also 10 different file editions. Therefore, it's just an identical copy, and not just nice that I have actually the protection on. Now, we have another file. This is basically my backup file. What is on the backup file? the backup of my phone, but I tried to do backups of my phone, but the problem is if you have like 512 gigs on your phone, if you have a backup, then it becomes very large. So therefore, I just don't back up my phone anymore. I try to switch to all of these services where I just could download things again, like Spotify, for example. And I just don't have like audio books stored on my phone, but instead I just use a service that actually provides the file to me if I hit download. So therefore, I have an image of my notebook on here. This is created by Acronis image, which in the past failed me. So I lost all the files because my notebook was in repair and because my notebook just died before. And I was like, but this time around I have a proper image backup. Therefore, I don't need to invest any time into restoring all of my notebook. And then I got it back, I plugged it in, and it failed like 20 times. And then I decided to spend 1 or 2 weeks of work time to restore my notebook to its original configuration, which is something you cannot really do, but, well, I mean, you can approximate it. The backup image of my notebook, but also the backup file of all the files. What are actual files? I just call them files instead of media files because these are text documents. These are PDFs. So basically, these are things that are stored that have like information, like proper information attached to it, like a license, for example, or it's a document like a book, or instead. So these are basically files you would think of as files like Word documents, PDFs, things that are not very storage intensive, and these are just media files, pictures, videos, and audio. So basically these are audio files, video files, and also images. I only store these 3 different file types on here, and the rest is stored on here. If I have like a screenshot of something, then this is not really an image because it's much rather a document that documents something for me to consume it again. It's not really consumption, but I use it for work basically. Not really for work, but much rather just use it for the information it provides me with. Whereas a video file or an image is kind of something else. I at least categorize it this way. So now I have the backup of my notebook on here, and I also I have the image backup, but I also create a file backup of all these files. This is the one file, and then I have, again, an identical copy of these. The next step is that all of the files, basically the 1 terabyte, and this is also why it's very nice. I mean, it worked in the past even better. It didn't work even better, but it was also nice for not having 5 terabyte files. But this means I have 2 terabytes on my notebook. I can basically create, if all of this was filled, then the creative image, not the creative image, but my notebook image would be at max 2 terabytes. Then my file, so my notebook files, so basically the exact copy of all the files on my notebook would also be 2 terabytes. And I just store it on this one drive, and I have like 1 terabyte of extra storage. And then I just have an identical copy. This is what the local things, so basically the hard drives I have. Additionally, I store basically all of the files on my notebook in OneDrive, and I also try to back up these things on OneDrive, but the thing is, OneDrive doesn't really offer a way to back up external files. So therefore, I just did quite a workaround with attaching it as a network storage, because I have more OneDrive storage than 1 terabyte. And I try to also upload these. So if you think about it, what is my primary data? I can take my notebook, I theoretically could take my phone, and I would have the primary data of 1 terabyte. So that's basically the files. Not the files, but of course all of these are files, but the actual documents. So I have documents on my phone and my notebook, and also programs. So and when it comes to programs, I also, by the way, I do have these programs stored on the foreign media on the creative file. So program installations like Lightroom Backup, for example. But most of these are stored in the image backup from my notebook. So when it comes to what is the primary data, so if I take the primary data, then I just take half of the files, and then I have still, so basically I have notebook backups, image plus the file backups, so basically just the files, just a copy of my notebook files, documents, and these are stored on here. But this is just a backup drive, therefore I can get rid of it. Then I have the copy drive, so basically the mirror drive. I can also get rid of this. Now I have all the creative files, which are stored on here. These are primary files, and I also have the copy. I can also get rid of this. When it comes to the primary files, I basically now have one drive plus my notebook. This means if I go on the road and I don't want to copy things, I can just take my notebook and this one drive, and I just can both of, and these are 1 terabyte on my notebook and 5 terabytes. So these are 6 terabytes of primary files that I also can store online. And the other ones are just backups. So basically, out of the 20 terabytes I have here, I only have primary data of 1 terabyte. And all these other ones are just copies, are just replacement drives. And this is very nice. Now, I store the 1 terabyte of documents also on OneDrive because these are the most important things. I have these 5 terabytes, and I also have like other strategies. What are the other strategies? I just decided that I didn't want to waste time of my life just recording all of these. Not recording, but just managing all of these different files anymore. So therefore the strategy I have now is this. If I record a video, something like this, and I think this is the most useful thing I can do, because this documents my life for myself. This documents, for example, also how I spoke at this specific point in time for myself, and I just basically publish this archive of me onto the internet. Also about my thoughts, and for example, if I ever need to research a file, how to manage my files, again, then I can just also for myself, basically as a consumer, as someone who watches these things, I can just go online onto YouTube, onto TikTok, onto Facebook, and just watch it again as a consumer. Therefore, it's also backed up online. I mean, most of these platforms compress the video. This was also an approach I took. I wanted to pursue. What if I just get rid of all the local copies and I just would record a video, then upload it, and then just delete it? This would make it just so much easier to actually create things. And by the way, this is also how TikTok works. TikTok made it very easy, or these platforms like TikTok or Instagram make it very easy, but especially TikTok. For example, if you record a TikTok and then you record like 10 different scenes, TikTok doesn't bombard you with, oh yeah, do you actually want to store these 10 different files on all of these different, and in which configuration do you want to store them? Do you want to store them in full HD, in 60 frames per second? Or should we also create copies of the edited versions? No, it just doesn't do any of this. The nice thing is the simplicity. You press the button and then you record all of these different things, and then you publish it either privately and it just downloads the one finished file. And you don't even have to store the one file because you have TikTok, and at any point in time you can just download the file again in full HD. This is the finished file. Obviously there is the TikTok watermark, and this is kind of a problem. But at the same time, what if this was the only way? What if you just couldn't store the files? And this is also why so many people just can now create TikToks. Because they don't have to think about, oh yeah, and then I have this drive, and this drive is a copy of this drive, and this drive actually is something that I, lost like 10 times, and I also had to buy this drive, and then I thought about Thunderbolt and USB-C and getting a RAID, and these are things nobody wants to think about. People just want to create. They just want to take their phone, and this is something due to technology that is possible now, and just, this is interesting. Let's just record this and then push one button and then it's done. The only thing you have to do is you can even publish it without tags. This is the only thing you have to do now. And this just makes it so much easier. It's from idea to finished product, the way is just so much easier. And this just prevents yourself. So whenever you have an idea, there's a threshold. The threshold of, oh yeah, do I actually want to add like 10 gigabytes of storage? For example, this video probably has like 10 gigabytes. If I just decided to not store these 10 gigabytes, then I wouldn't have to even hassle around with these 20 terabytes of files. So therefore, the approach I almost wanted to take was this. I had two different types of files. The one that basically documented my life for myself. Like, when it comes to images, I mean, you don't have to think about it. If you just record JPEGs, JPEGs don't take that much space. You can also store all these images, all these JPEGs, for example, on the cloud. Therefore, you don't actually have to store all of these. And I actually, just as of recently, switched all of the images I have that document basically my private life. I just switched them all and brought them onto my notebook, and now they are stored basically all in the cloud, and I don't have to manage these files anymore because they are on the cloud, and therefore there's a backup. And I thought like this: what if I either created to document things for myself, basically for self-consumption, I didn't want to share with the world, and the other thing is that I just created or shared things that I also could publish. Therefore, for example, I could record a video for myself, for like my future self. But what if I just took the same idea and just formulated it and recorded it in a way that I can publish it online? So I just take out very sensitive private data, for example, and then it's something that I can publish. And then it's also something I can watch. Like in 20 years, I don't have to think about, oh yeah, it's this drive and it was stored on here, but this is something I lost and dropped. Therefore, the only thing I have to do is like go on one of my channels and, oh yeah, here's the video. Let's just watch it. And that makes it very easy. The only thing that allowed me to finally now record videos is that I, for one, simplified my file approach. I actually figured this out. I mean, these are 4 different drives, and I still don't have like all of these copies of the backups. They are still not like current. These are not current versions because I still forgot I automated this at one point in time, but this only led to the files being overwritten, and therefore I had, again, so I had like a 4 terabyte main drive, so basically my creative drive in the past just failed. Then this was just one instance. Then I had like 2 instances where the copy program, so I deleted files by accident, and then because I scheduled the backups daily, I just didn't have them anymore. And then I had to restore them and rename all these files, and well. So now, for quite some time, I actually tried to pursue the idea of recording either shorts, and I would upload them to TikTok and delete all the local files. This was the one approach, the one for short video. The next approach was for the long videos. I would just take them, upload them to YouTube, and the thing is, I only record full HD. Also because of this, because I don't want to have like a RAID. I don't want to have like 50 terabytes of storage, and that would actually be like, I don't know, a RAID and then another RAID because you have to copy it, and then these. Also, in terms of budget, these are just things that are very, very expensive. If you want to get a RAID and get all the drives, then and want to get like 20 terabytes, 50 terabytes of storage, then it's into the thousands. And that's basically not something that makes it very easy to create content. When it comes to blogs, I had them on OneNote for quite some time. I also, in the past, had like a Word document for every single blog post I made. And I just decided to only store all of these things online. If I don't have access anymore, then I just don't have access anymore. Then that just happened. But the thing is that I don't have to manage like, oh yeah, there's the version in OneDrive. And then I forgot about the thing that I only added the versions online because I don't have internet access, and then you sit in the forest and you edit this one file because, yeah, well, I can upload it later. And then you forget that, oh, this one part is actually stored in here, and this other part I edited like a week later, and therefore I have this other part which is more updated online in WordPress. And then, oh yeah, I just do this together, and then these are things you don't want to think about. Therefore, here's the thing. You just create one version of a file, and this file ideally is stored online. If this video is done, as of right now, I just store this file as a video file. Then I upload it to YouTube, and I don't delete it right now because I don't trust YouTube that much, and I also realized, I mean, if you download the thing from YouTube, then you don't get the original file, but it's a compressed file. So as usual, the phone ran out of battery in the meanwhile, and I am recording again, and I just take a look on the mic because I just didn't know if the actual audio was also recorded. We talked about files, and we talked a lot about all these different approaches. Here's the one thing I think you need to understand. It's just not easy. It hasn't been easy for me. It can be a lot easier for you if you are far more intelligent than me. But the thing is that these things are only very easy because there have been people thinking about this for years. Not people like me, but much more the people at Google, the people at TikTok that actually just made it so easy. The only reason you can use a phone so easy with so many functions like a smartphone is because people have spent years thinking about designing these things. To make them easy, to make them intuitive, there are studies upon studies upon studies how people interact with these things, what people expect. And therefore, this is the only reason you can actually just use TikTok. You are just, oh yeah, let's just record this, and then do I want to add a sound? Yes, just add the sound, and oh yeah, I can just search here. But the search here is, for example, something that has like a huge backend. In the 2000s, for example, Steve Jobs just talked with all these different recording companies, all these different labels like Warner Music, because they didn't offer digital music. And that's something Steve Jobs, for example, did quite well because he actually then established iTunes. And that's the only reason, like this and the continuation of this development is the only reason you actually just can use TikTok and just, oh yeah, just this. Or Spotify. I mean, Spotify hasn't around like 15 years ago. It hasn't been around. 15 years ago, when I grew up, Spotify just wasn't a thing because these services just didn't exist. And all of these different approaches I talked you through, these are approaches that just make it easier. That just make the actual thing you want to do easier. And if you don't do the actual thing, but instead spend 70 to 80% of your time in the backend, organizing all of these files, creating like a system for organizing all of these files, creating, oh yeah, for example, a very easy example. You record something. You record like a city. You record a train in a city because you think the train looks nice. And then you want to use it for a video you want to publish to YouTube. Then obviously, within the video editing program, you want to have or for the video editing program, you want to have a file where all the different single files are stored in, because then whenever you open up the project, you are kind of like, you can go in and be just like, oh yeah, here's the file. Because otherwise you would have all these different paths that would lead to, oh yeah, this is the drive with the name D. But the drive with the name D existed only 10 years ago, and now it doesn't anymore because I have a different drive, and also it's a different cable, and therefore it's a different port, and also Windows still doesn't get the same drive with the same letters every single time. It's just something Windows is not good at, I guess. And therefore, if you open up the program, not the program, but the video project in like a few weeks or in like 2 years, then there is just you just cannot continue editing this thing. Obviously, if the only thing that would work if you constrained the number of video projects you are working on at any point in time, then you're just, oh yeah, and I just then put all of these files back into the directories. But this is just also very much backend. So here are now, as a final resolution, all of the different approaches that made it so easy, or made it the easiest it has ever been for me to record all of these things. First of all, I got a notebook that basically can record everything apart from video and audio. It cannot record anything. It's just a notebook. Because, I mean, it just wouldn't make any sense to just actually put a decent camera into a notebook and also a decent microphone, would it? That you could actually call people with your notebook? Would that be a thing that would maybe be useful for people in the future? I don't know. So I have my notebook. It's a 2-in-1. It has an internal GPU. I do have 1 TB of notebook storage, and I do have an additional terabyte SSD for editing. But I just don't edit anymore. I just don't edit pictures, almost no more. And I just quit basically video editing. Because I video edited for a few, I just tried it, and it was like, I did this one video for a company once that just earned me a few bucks, I guess. And it just took, I guess, just editing 40 hours and also several resets, because obviously these programs crash like every 3 hours, and then you can basically redo the whole video. This is just something that was the experience you had. It was not like, obviously you could do it, and also back in the past there just might have been a way to not lose all the files every 5 hours when editing a video, but this is just not something that happened to me, because I wasn't as knowledgeable, and therefore I actually have to store all of these different, I actually have to turn on the setting to automatically save all these different things. The automatic saving feature, for example, in Word just didn't exist like 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, let's say. So now, I got my notebook. I basically don't store any media files on my notebook, apart from the pictures and screenshots I take for information purpose. The same is true for the phone. My phone is a 2-part device. It's basically a copy of my notebook, but since it acts basically as my main camera. And I also use an external mic to directly connect it with a USB interface, and then I just have the professional audio, which you are hearing right now, and you probably are wondering, oh, why does it sound so nice? It's because I have an external mic connected to it, and this is also something I thought years about, and I just didn't find a solution. I tried lots of external mics, and I just didn't find a solution, and this is also not the best solution because it's not something that's very portable. Now, then I have one video file. This can either be a short video file or a long video file. If it's something in between, like 2 to 5 minutes, then I try to delete them. Even though there are things I have written, for example, in the past, like, for example, a blog post or a poem or an essay, and I just recorded it, and it was like in between 1 minute and 5 minutes. So these are the limits I set for myself. 1 to 60 seconds or 0 to 1 minute for a short video. I then publish to TikTok. I publish also in the future as a copy platform to YouTube. And since I try to not use any external sounds or try to not make TikTok native content, but much rather use TikTok just to publish these short videos where I don't have any music, because these are all things that just prevent you from actually getting better, because you spend time doing things like adding music to it. And then you cannot copy the same video to YouTube without getting copyright, or without the risk of getting copyright issues. Now, these are the 2 file types. I also try to not record any audio files anymore. I still have a few audio files from the past, like intros, podcast intros. But the thing is, I just create video files, also when I do podcasts. When I do podcasts, for example, it works like this. I write a blog post, but not on my notebook, but on the web, on my WordPress page. Then it's on my WordPress page, and the only thing I have to do to publish it is to schedule it and then to publish it. The next step is that I just take my phone, just pull up the page, so I don't have to manually, oh yeah, this is in OneNote, and this is this edition of this blog post, for example. I just take the published post, or the post on my WordPress page, I just access it on my phone, I just take my phone, connect the mic to it, I screen record it, then I have, again, the professional audio, and then I have basically the podcast audio, but I also have a video. Therefore, the video, again, is the native file, the original file. I store the original file. I can also use the original file as a video for YouTube. And then I just take the video file and upload it to Anchor, my podcast host, which takes video files. Therefore, I don't have to create an audio file, which is huge, because I just don't store audio files anymore. If I create a podcast intro, I just connect my mic, I just take the intro page from my WordPress page, for example, and I just read the intro from there. And the outro, sometimes I just do it as an improvisation. I'm not quite sure about intro and outro, because these are not like proper blog posts. and I still have an intro and an outro on, at least on my podcast, not on my YouTube channels, because I mean, you could do these things, but what happens if in 1 year I decide to redo the intro? What do? Do I then re-edit all of these files, all of these videos, and I cannot really just replace the video on YouTube. Therefore, I have like an inconsistency. But if instead I only take the video, just without anything else, and the video has always the same setup, it's just the phone and the mic, then I just don't have these issues anymore. The only thing, and I also don't, it's like, it doesn't say like, oh yeah, this channel, YouTube, or it's not even a YouTube channel, it's just a file. I just use YouTube as a platform. And if YouTube decides to not be a thing anymore in the future, or just decides to ban me from the platform, then I just still have the video file. And I can just take the video file and publish it to another platform. So therefore, try to minimize the content and standardize the content and make it as minimal as possible. Strip it down to its core. I don't have any visuals. If I have visuals or graphics and overlays, I don't know. I mean, I still could theoretically do these things. I still could take this video and then add graphics in. But what if I instead just talked? Then I would have to think about maybe adding these things in. Now, a final resolution. The battery died in between, as usual. Try to trim everything down to the one thing that makes the most out of your time. This could be producing these kind of style videos. This could be getting rid of all the unnecessary things, like typing letters onto videos, typing titles, editing thumbnails for videos. Maybe that's very useful, but what if, for example, I don't finish the argument right here. I just cut it off. So, now, here's the thing. It's decision theory. The more you get rid of things you don't want to do, the more freedom you have, actually. Example, I don't play music anymore if I don't record music. This means whenever I want to play music, then I record it. So therefore, I don't have to mess with the situation. I don't have to care about the situations. I don't have to deal with the situation where I am playing music. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's nice. I actually could record it. But I do this for fun right now. Therefore, what do I do? So now, if you just get rid of these things, if you just say that whenever you record things, then it's posted to the public, for example, or for your private life. These are the only two categories. These are the only two buckets where it makes sense to store, to use. Then nevertheless, not nevertheless, but storage space is still very scarce. And if you wanna use it, try to make something that's worth using the storage space for. Standardize. So this is like one thing. Now, standardize all the things. If I, again as an example, press stop on this video, then it's the identical dimension, it's the identical height. Maybe even the lighting is every single time identical, because this just allows me to just turn on the lighting to just record. Of course, you could travel the world and like include all these very nice spots in the world, but what if you didn't? So you could say it's only one perspective. It's not about doing the best out of all the options that are there, but at some point you have to actually decide what you don't want to do. Do I really want to, for example, just have the possibility to upgrade to a RED camera to improve the video quality of all of my videos so drastically that everybody will be impressed? Or do I decide at some point in time that it doesn't make sense and therefore I don't have to think about it anymore? Do I really have to? Do I really want to care about? Or do I just want to think about what I wear for these videos? Or do I just don't anymore? Therefore, it's about finding solutions for problems for the rest of your life, and therefore not having to think about these problems anymore for the rest of your life. If you, off topic, decide to do more sport, then of course you can, but it only makes sense if it's something that's systemic, if it's something that you will now do for the rest of your life. You don't have to do everything for the rest of your life, but for example, if you view everything out of this lens, if it's something that's systemic, if it's something you actually wanted to do for the rest of your life, then you begin to realize that it doesn't make sense to now record for the next 24 hours just to have a few videos. Of course, then you have a lot of videos, but then what happens the next day? Do you do it again? What about the things apart from doing this thing? Therefore, it just makes sense to do the thing that's systemic. And if you do only the things that are systemic, then it's also the question of what you do becomes just less of a problem. For example, if you would write a program, you would write all the code, and then you would find like one solution that could improve everything, and then you just delete the old file that was like 4 weeks of work, and you then have to do it all over again. But you can't, because it took 4 weeks. And that's the problem. If you keep all these options open, if you still eventually want to produce these high quality YouTube videos, for example, if you still want to have a drone, if you still, I'm talking about myself obviously, if I still wanted to, oh yeah, I could also learn this other instrument and this instrument and this instrument. If you don't close down the options of what you can do, it just drains you, because you then don't know what to do. It just leaves uncertainty. And that's what decision theory is about. And that's what finally, also including all the other things I stated, allowed me to finally record something instead of not.